My name is Delphine Okonkwo, and I used to be the Senior Quality Assurance Manager at Helix Pharmaceuticals. For 3 years, I made sure our medical devices didn't kill anyone. Then my new boss decided that safety protocols were slowing down innovation. So I decided to follow his new rules, exactly as he wanted. It cost him his career, saved lives, and taught me that sometimes the best revenge is just doing your job perfectly. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this all started. Helix Pharmaceuticals wasn't always a nightmare. When I started there in 2019, we were a mid-sized medical device manufacturer based in Minneapolis. We made surgical instruments, diagnostic equipment, and specialized monitoring devices for hospitals. Nothing sexy, nothing that would make headlines, but everything we produced had to be perfect because people's lives literally depended on it. I loved my job. I know that sounds naive, but I genuinely did. I joined Helix right after getting my master's in biomedical engineering, and I believed in what we were doing. My team of 12 quality assurance specialists reviewed every product before it shipped. We tested, we documented, we found problems, and we fixed them. Our rejection rate was about 3%, which was actually excellent for the industry. My boss, Patricia Volkov, was old school, former Soviet engineer who'd immigrated in the 90s and built her career on one principle: if it's not safe, it doesn't ship. Period. She backed us up every single time production tried to rush something through. She fought with executives who wanted to cut corners. She made enemies in procurement because she insisted on quality materials even when they cost more. Patricia retired in January 2022. I applied for her position, naturally. I'd been there 3 years, knew every product line, had relationships with every department, and had a spotless record. The job posting sat open for 2 months while they conducted a thorough search. In March, they announced Patricia's replacement, Derek Pemberton. Derek came from Quantum Dynamics, a tech startup that made consumer fitness trackers. You know, those wristbands that count your steps and monitor your heart rate. Completely different world from what we did. Those devices were classified as general wellness products, barely regulated, no FDA approval needed, sold at Target for $79.99. Our products? Class 2 and Class 3 medical devices, FDA regulated, hospital equipment, devices used during surgery. If one of our products failed, someone could die. The regulatory requirements alone filled 3-ring binders. Derek was 34, had an MBA from a decent school, and apparently impressed the executive team with his presentation about disrupting medical device manufacturing and adopting Silicon Valley velocity. He wore expensive sneakers to the office and called everyone rock star and champion. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Really, I did. Derek's first all-hands meeting with the QA department was on a Monday morning. My team filed into the conference room, 12 people with a combined 89 years of experience in medical device quality assurance. Derek bounced in 15 minutes late holding a green smoothie. "Morning, rock stars. Okay, let's make this quick because I've got a packed day. I've been reviewing our numbers, and I'll be honest, I'm concerned. Our time to market is glacial compared to industry standards. Patricia's old processes are creating bottlenecks that are costing us millions in opportunity costs." Sophia Martinez, one of my senior specialists, raised her hand. "Mr. Pemberton, just to clarify, what industry standards are you comparing us to? Medical device QA is significantly different from consumer electronics." Derek waved his hand dismissively. "Quality is quality, Sophia. At Quantum, we shipped updates every 2 weeks. Here, it takes us 6 months to get a product modification through QA. That's not sustainable in today's market." "Those updates were software patches for step counters," I interjected carefully. "We're testing equipment that gets used in operating rooms. The FDA requires—" "I'm aware of FDA requirements, Delphine," Derek cut me off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But I'm also aware that our competitors are moving faster than us. Velocity equals market share. We need to adopt an agile mindset." He clicked to his next slide. "New QA framework. Fail fast, iterate quickly." My stomach dropped. For the next 30 minutes, Derek outlined his vision: shorter testing cycles, reduced documentation requirements, risk-based sampling instead of comprehensive testing, parallel processing instead of sequential reviews. His entire presentation was full of buzzwords that sounded efficient but were completely inappropriate for medical device manufacturing. "I'm setting a goal," Derek announced. "I want our QA approval time cut by 60% within 6 months. We're going to streamline, eliminate redundancies, and empower the team to make faster decisions." "Derek," I said slowly, "some of those redundancies are FDA-mandated requirements. We can't just—" "We can't or we won't." Derek's smile was still there, but his voice had an edge. "Look, I get it. Change is uncomfortable, but I was brought in specifically to modernize this department. Patricia did great work in her time, but that time is over. We need fresh thinking." After the meeting, my entire team clustered in my office. "He's going to get someone killed," Sophia said flatly. "He doesn't understand what we do," added James O'Coffer, our regulatory compliance specialist. "Those testing protocols exist because of past failures. People died before those rules were put in place." "I know," I said. "I'll talk to him once he understands the actual risks." But Derek didn't want to understand. Over the next month, Derek implemented his improvements systematically. First, he cut our testing cycle from 4 weeks to 10 days. When I explained that some tests literally required 3 weeks of continuous runtime to properly stress test devices, he suggested we extrapolate results from shorter tests. It's called predictive modeling, Delphine. Every tech company does it. Tech companies aren't responsible for surgical equipment. Not with that attitude, they're not. Then he reduced our documentation requirements. The comprehensive test reports we'd always generated, documenting every test, every result, every observation, were now too detailed for practical use. He wanted executive summaries, 1-page, bullet points, pass-fail only. "Nobody reads 40-page reports anyway," Derek insisted. "The FDA does," James countered. "During audits, they examine everything. Then we'll generate the detailed reports if and when we get audited. No reason to waste time on documentation that just sits in a file." That wasn't how it worked. That wasn't how any of this worked. Documentation had to be contemporaneous, created during the testing process, not retroactively. But Derek didn't want to hear it. The real crisis came in May with the NeuroPulse 7000. The NeuroPulse was our newest product, a cranial monitoring device used during brain surgery. It provided real-time data on intracranial pressure, blood flow, and electrical activity. It was sophisticated, expensive, and absolutely critical. If it malfunctioned during surgery, a patient could suffer permanent brain damage or death. The NeuroPulse had been in development for 3 years. It was scheduled to ship to hospitals in July. Patricia had insisted on extensive testing protocols, 6 months of QA review minimum. Derek looked at the timeline and laughed. 6 months? For what? It's a sensor with a wireless transmitter. We can have this done in 6 weeks. "It's a Class 3 medical device," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "It requires pre-market approval from the FDA. The testing protocols—" "Are you telling me what the protocols are, Delphine? Because I've been reading FDA guidance documents and there's significant flexibility in how these reviews are conducted." He was technically correct, but fundamentally wrong. Yes, there was some flexibility, but only within a framework of rigorous safety testing. Derek was interpreting flexibility as, we can skip whatever seems inconvenient. I tried escalating to Derek's boss, Vivian Reeves, the VP of Operations. She listened politely to my concerns, then said, "Derek was hired specifically to increase our efficiency, Delphine. If you're not comfortable with his approach, perhaps this isn't the right role for you." There it was, the implicit threat: adapt or leave. In June, Derek issued his masterpiece, the Accelerated QA Protocol. It was a 12-page document that fundamentally gutted our quality assurance process. Key highlights: testing cycles reduced from 4 weeks to 5 days for low-risk devices, with Derek defining what counted as low risk, sample testing instead of comprehensive testing, test 10 units instead of 100, simplified documentation, essential findings only, parallel processing of normally sequential tests, QA team empowered to approve products without manager sign-off for routine items. The document was full of language like optimized workflows and risk-based decision-making and empowered teams. It sounded modern and efficient. It was also a recipe for disaster. I read through it 3 times, each time feeling more sick to my stomach. This protocol would maybe be appropriate for low-risk consumer devices. For medical equipment, it was negligent. I drafted a detailed response outlining my concerns. I cited FDA regulations, industry standards, historical case studies of what happened when companies cut QA corners. I tried to be professional, factual, non-emotional. Derek's response came back in 24 hours. Thanks for the feedback, Delphine. I appreciate your perspective, though I don't share your concerns. The accelerated QA protocol will be implemented on July 1st. I need you to be a team player on this. Team player. There was that phrase again. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the NeuroPulse 7000, about all our products, about the hospitals and patients relying on equipment we certified as safe. Around 2 a.m., I had a realization. Derek wanted his new protocol implemented exactly as written. He wanted faster approvals, less documentation, streamlined processes. He'd made it very clear that my concerns were unwelcome and that my job depended on compliance. Fine, I'd comply. Perfectly. But here's the thing about badly written policies. When you follow them exactly, precisely, and completely, their flaws become obvious very quickly. Derek wanted to empower my team to approve products without manager oversight. Great. I'd document every single instance where that happened and ensure Derek was formally responsible for that decision. He wanted simplified documentation. Perfect. I'd provide exactly what he asked for. Nothing more, nothing less. No additional context, no extra safety notes, no detailed analysis, just the bare minimum he'd specified. He wanted parallel testing instead of sequential. Wonderful. When tests that should be run in a specific order were run simultaneously and produced invalid results, the records would show we'd followed the approved protocol. I wasn't going to sabotage anything. I wasn't going to fake results or skip actual safety testing. I was going to follow Derek's rules exactly as written, document everything meticulously, and let the system expose its own flaws. And if products failed to meet safety standards under Derek's protocols, well, then they wouldn't ship. Because unlike Derek, I actually understood the one rule that trumped everything else. If it's not safe, it doesn't ship. The FDA regulations and actual legal requirements hadn't changed. Derek's internal protocol couldn't override federal law, so I'd follow his protocol right up until it conflicted with legal requirements, and then I'd follow the law and document exactly why we couldn't ship. I sent an email to Derek at 3 a.m. Derek, I've reviewed the accelerated QA protocol thoroughly. You're absolutely right that we need to modernize our processes. I'm committed to implementing your new framework exactly as you've outlined it. My team and I will begin following the new protocol on July 1st as directed. I'll provide you with detailed status reports so you're always aware of how the new process is performing. Looking forward to this exciting new chapter. Delphine. He responded the next morning. That's the attitude I've been looking for, champion. Glad you're on board. Oh, I was on board, just not in the way he thought. July 1st arrived. I called a team meeting at 8 a.m. Effective today, we're implementing Derek's accelerated QA protocol, I told my team. I need everyone to follow it exactly as written, not approximately, not with common sense modifications, exactly as specified. Sophia frowned. Delphine, some of these procedures don't make... I know, follow them anyway. But here's what I also need. Documentation. Every test, every result, every decision. Document which protocol step you were following and what happened. If something seems wrong, note it in the record, but still follow the protocol. If we have to deviate from the protocol to comply with FDA requirements, document exactly why we couldn't ship. James caught on immediately. His eyes widened slightly, and he nodded. And one more thing, I continued. Every product approval or rejection, I'm copying Derek on the documentation. He wanted to be involved in modernizing our processes, so I want to make sure he's fully informed about how his system is performing. The first product to go through the new system was a batch of surgical forceps, relatively low-risk, routine production. Under Patricia's old system, we'd test 100 units from the batch, run them through 15 different tests, and generate a comprehensive report. Under Derek's system, test 10 units, run 8 tests, provide a one-page summary. I sent it to Derek and approved the shipment. 2 days later, a hospital reported that forceps from that batch had a grip strength issue, not dangerous but annoying for surgeons. We investigated and found that about 15% of the batch had a minor manufacturing defect. Our sample of 10 units had, by chance, missed it entirely. Under the old system, testing 100 units would have caught it. Under Derek's system, it slipped through. I documented the incident thoroughly and sent it to Derek. Product complaint received. Root cause analysis indicates manufacturing variants not detected during QA sampling. Accelerated Protocol Section 3.2 specifies sample size of 10 units. Statistical analysis suggests 100-unit sample size would have 95% probability of detecting this issue. Current protocol has 65% probability. FYI. Derek's response: these things happen. Overall system is working fine. The NeuralPulse 7000 entered QA review. Under Patricia's old protocol, 6 months of comprehensive testing, environmental stress testing, electromagnetic interference testing, battery life testing under various conditions, signal accuracy testing, failure mode analysis, biocompatibility testing, sterilization validation. Under Derek's protocol, 6 weeks, abbreviated testing, parallel processing. I followed his protocol exactly. Day 1. We ran environmental and EMI tests simultaneously instead of sequentially. The EMI testing equipment interfered with the environmental chamber's sensors, making both sets of results questionable. I documented it. Parallel testing per Accelerated Protocol Section 4.1 resulted in test interference. Results unreliable. Protocol does not specify procedure for this scenario. Awaiting guidance. Derek's response: run them again separately then. Use common sense. I wrote back, Accelerated Protocol specifies 6-week timeline. Running tests separately will require 8 weeks total, exceeding protocol timeframe. Please advise, should I follow protocol timeline or protocol testing sequence? These appear to be in conflict. Radio silence for 12 hours, then, do your best to meet timeline while maintaining quality. That wasn't guidance. That was Derek wanting me to make the decision so he wouldn't be responsible. I documented his response and made the decision myself. Follow the law, not his timeline. We ran the tests separately and correctly. It took the extra time. Derek wanted simplified documentation, so that's exactly what I provided. Every single time. Product after product, I sent him one-page summaries with no context, no analysis, no additional safety observations, just the bare minimum his protocol specified. But here's what Derek didn't realize. Those one-pagers still had to be backed up by actual test data to satisfy FDA requirements. so my team was generating comprehensive documentation. We had to, legally, but I was only sending Derek the oversimplified summaries he'd demanded. After 2 weeks, Derek scheduled a meeting. "Delphine, I'm concerned about our documentation. These one-page summaries, I'm not sure they're giving me enough visibility into what's happening." I pulled out a copy of his protocol. Section 7.3 specifies executive summaries not to exceed 1 page. That's what I'm providing.
Yes, but I feel like I'm missing context. Can you include more detail? Of course. How much detail would you like? Should I revise the protocol to specify that? Derek looked uncomfortable. Just use your judgment. Derek, you've made it very clear that you want the accelerated protocol followed precisely. If you want different documentation, I need you to formally revise the protocol. Otherwise, I'm going to continue following the specifications you provided. He wasn't used to people holding him to his own rules. Fine, send me more detailed reports, 2 pages instead of 1. Can you put that in writing? I want to make sure I'm following current guidelines. His jaw tightened. Sure, Delphine, I'll send an email. The email never came, but I started sending 2-page summaries anyway, documenting in each one that I was providing additional detail per Derek Pemberton's verbal request, 7/18/2022. The NeuroPulse 7000 testing hit a critical problem. During long-duration reliability testing, we discovered that the battery life was significantly shorter than specifications when the device was used in actual surgical conditions: bright lights, multiple other electronic devices nearby, temperature fluctuations from surgical lamps. Patricia's protocol would have caught this in month 2 of testing. Derek's abbreviated protocol found it in week 4, just 2 weeks before the scheduled ship date. I documented the finding and sent it to Derek. NeuroPulse 7000 battery life fails to meet specifications under realistic surgical conditions. Device shuts down after 4.2 hours average. Specification requires 6-hour minimum. This is a critical failure. Unexpected shutdown during brain surgery poses immediate patient risk. Recommend do not ship until issue resolved. Product fails to meet safety requirements per FDA Class 3 device standards. Derek called me 10 minutes later. Delphine, we have hospital orders totaling $3.2 million for NeuroPulse units. They're expecting delivery next month. I understand, the device isn't safe to ship. Can't we just update the specifications, make it a 4-hour battery life requirement? No, surgeons need 6 hours because some brain surgeries run longer than 4 hours. And we've already submitted the 6-hour specification to the FDA. Changing it would require a new filing and approval process. What if we include backup batteries? That would require redesigning the battery compartment and recertifying the entire device. We're talking months of additional work. Derek was silent for a long moment. Delphine, I need you to find a way to make this work. I have found a way to make it work. We delay shipment until engineering solves the battery problem. That's the only option that doesn't violate FDA regulations. The timeline pressure here is, Derek, if this device shuts down during a brain surgery, a patient could die or suffer permanent brain damage. I'm not approving it for shipment. That's non-negotiable. Another long silence. Let me talk to engineering and get back to you. Over the next 2 weeks, the same pattern repeated across multiple products. Derek's abbreviated testing protocols were consistently missing problems that our old protocols would have caught. When we found issues, his response was always some variation of, "Can't we work around it?" or "Is it really that serious?" or "What if we just..." Every time I documented the issue, cited the specific regulation or standard being violated, and refused to compromise on safety. And every single time, I made sure to note in my documentation, per accelerated QA protocol implemented by Derek Pemberton, effective July 1, 2022. Derek started avoiding me. Our weekly one-on-ones were constantly rescheduled or canceled. When we did meet, he was defensive and irritable. Delphine, I feel like you're not really embracing the new system. I'm following it exactly as you wrote it, Derek. You're being deliberately obstructionist. I'm ensuring we comply with FDA regulations. If your protocol conflicts with legal requirements, the law takes precedence. That's not obstructionism, that's regulatory compliance. He had no response to that. In late August, we received notification that the FDA was conducting a routine inspection of our facility in October. These happened every few years. Normally, they were tedious but straightforward. The FDA would review our processes, examine our documentation, and verify we were following regulations. With Patricia's systems, we'd always passed easily. When I told Derek about the inspection, his face went pale. What will they look at? Everything. Our QA protocols, our documentation, our test results, our approval records. They'll pick several recent products and trace them through our entire process. Will they see the accelerated protocol? Of course, it's our current official QA process. Derek's hands were shaking slightly. And if they have concerns about it, they'll issue a Form 483 listing observed deficiencies. Depending on severity, they could issue warning letters, fines, or in extreme cases, shut down production. For the first time since he'd arrived, Derek looked genuinely scared. Delphine, I need you to make sure we pass this inspection. I'll do exactly what I always do, provide accurate documentation and answer their questions honestly. Maybe we should review some of the recent approvals, make sure everything is solid. Everything I've approved meets FDA requirements. I've documented every instance where your protocol conflicted with regulations and explained how we resolved those conflicts. You've been documenting conflicts with my protocol? Of course, you told me to document everything, so I did. Derek left my office looking like he might be sick.
The next morning, I was summoned to a meeting with Derek, Vivian Reeves, VP of Operations, and Thomas Caldwell, General Counsel. Thomas got right to the point. Delphine, Derek has expressed concerns about your documentation practices. He suggests you've been creating records that could be problematic for the upcoming FDA inspection. I pulled out my laptop. Would you like to see the documentation? Please. I walked them through 6 months of records. Every product approval and rejection, every instance where Derek's protocol had missed safety issues, every email where I'd asked for clarification and Derek had provided vague non-answers, every problem that Patricia's old system would have caught earlier. The three of them reviewed in silence. The room temperature seemed to drop about 10 degrees. Finally, Thomas spoke. Mr. Pemberton, did you implement this accelerated QA protocol without running it past our regulatory compliance team? Derek stammered. It was based on industry best practices from Your previous company made fitness trackers, Thomas interrupted coldly. We make Class 3 medical devices. The regulatory frameworks are completely different. Vivian was reading through my documentation, her expression growing darker. Derek, some of these decisions, if we'd shipped the Neuropulse with that battery issue? But we didn't ship it, Delphine caught it. Despite your protocol, not because of it, Thomas said. Delphine, how many safety issues did you document that were missed by the accelerated protocol but would have been caught under the previous system? I pulled up my summary spreadsheet. 14 significant issues across 23 products. None of them resulted in unsafe shipments because we caught them during testing, but the average detection time increased by 300%, and the cost of finding and fixing problems later in the process increased our QA expenses by approximately $180,000. Vivian closed her eyes. Derek, you told me this would reduce costs and increase efficiency. It would have if Delphine had... If Delphine had what? Thomas snapped. Ignored safety problems? Violated FDA regulations? Let you ship potentially dangerous medical devices? Derek had no answer.
Thomas turned to me. Delphine, in your professional opinion, is the accelerated QA protocol adequate for our manufacturing requirements? No, it's fundamentally inappropriate for medical device QA. It might work for consumer electronics, but it creates unacceptable risks for regulated medical equipment. Why didn't you say this more forcefully when it was first introduced? I did, multiple times. I was told that my concerns weren't welcome and that my job security depended on being a team player and implementing the new system. I pulled up the emails, showed them Derek's responses, Vivian's veiled threat about finding a new role. Thomas's expression went from stern to furious. Vivian, did you threaten Delphine's employment for raising legitimate safety concerns? That's not how I intended it, but that's how any reasonable person would interpret it. Thomas looked at Derek. And you repeatedly dismissed safety concerns from a qualified QA manager with years of medical device experience because you thought you knew better after 6 months in the industry?
The meeting lasted another hour. By the end, Derek was suspended pending investigation. Vivian was placed on administrative leave. I was asked to prepare a full report on all QA issues over the past 6 months and recommendations for returning to appropriate protocols. The FDA inspection in October was one of the most thorough I'd ever experienced. 2 investigators spent 3 days reviewing everything. They examined the accelerated protocol, they reviewed my documentation, they interviewed my team, they looked at the products we'd approved and rejected. On the final day, the lead investigator met with me and Thomas. Ms. Okonkwo, your documentation is exemplary. You clearly identified multiple instances where the company's internal protocol conflicted with regulatory requirements, and in every case, you ensured compliance with the regulations. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. However, we have significant concerns about the accelerated protocol itself. It appears to have been implemented without adequate consideration of regulatory requirements for medical device QA. Thomas nodded. The protocol has been suspended. We've returned to our previous QA system and are conducting a comprehensive review of all products approved under the temporary protocol. The investigator made notes. We'll need documentation of that review, and we'll be recommending increased oversight of your QA operations for the next 2 years. It wasn't the worst outcome. No fines, no warning letters, no production shutdown. But the increased oversight meant more frequent inspections, expensive and time-consuming. Derek was fired in November. The official reason was strategic differences, but everyone knew the truth. Vivian survived with a formal reprimand and mandatory training on regulatory compliance and retaliation prevention. I was offered Derek's position. After 6 months of acting director, I was officially promoted to director of quality assurance. The first thing I did was formally rescind the accelerated QA protocol and restore Patricia's systems, with some actual improvements based on what we'd learned. Not Derek's reckless shortcuts, but genuine efficiencies that didn't compromise safety. The NeuroPulse 7000 eventually shipped in February 2023, after engineering solved the battery issue. It became one of our most successful products. My team, who'd watched me navigate those 6 months, developed a fierce loyalty. They'd seen me protect both them and our work, even when it would have been easier to go along with Derek's demands. People sometimes ask me if I feel bad about what happened to Derek. The honest answer, no. Derek came into a field he didn't understand, dismissed the expertise of people who'd spent years learning how to do things correctly, and implemented changes that could have gotten people killed, not hypothetically, actually killed. If that NeuroPulse device had shipped with the battery flaw and shut down during a brain surgery, the consequences would have been catastrophic. And when safety concerns were raised, he didn't listen. He threatened jobs, dismissed expertise, and prioritized speed and cost over human lives. So I gave him exactly what he asked for:
I followed his protocol perfectly, documented everything meticulously, and let the system's flaws become impossible to ignore.
That's the thing about bad policies. They usually fail when implemented correctly. If you follow them precisely and document the results honestly, reality has a way of exposing the problems. I didn't sabotage Derek. I didn't have to. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own decisions. Derek, last I heard, is working at a software startup doing product management. No more medical devices. Probably for the best. Vivian is still at Helix, but was passed over for her next promotion. The retaliation complaint stays in her HR file. I'm still at Helix Pharmaceuticals, still running QA, still fighting with production and procurement when necessary, but now I have the authority to make those fights count. Patricia sent me a congratulations card when she heard about my promotion. Inside, she'd written, "The job was always yours. You just had to prove you were willing to hold the line even when it cost you. Well done." The surgical forceps we approved with the grip strength issue, the hospital complained, we did a voluntary recall of that batch, and we fixed the manufacturing process. Cost us about $50,000 and some embarrassment, but nobody was hurt. And that's the difference between Patricia's way, my way, and Derek's way. Patricia's way, catch every problem before it ships, expensive but safe. Derek's way, ship fast, deal with problems later, cheap until someone dies. My way, follow the rules precisely, document everything, and never compromise on safety no matter how much pressure you're under. You know what the best part of this whole story is? Derek thought he was modernizing medical device manufacturing. He thought he was bringing innovation to a hidebound industry. He thought the old guard just didn't understand. But innovation without safety isn't innovation, it's negligence. Speed without testing isn't efficiency, it's recklessness. And dismissing expertise isn't disruption, it's arrogance. Derek wanted to move fast and break things. That works fine when you're building social media apps. It doesn't work when your products are used inside human bodies. I didn't destroy his career. He did that himself. I just made sure there was a complete, accurate, legally defensible record of exactly how he did it. That's the real revenge, letting someone's own bad decisions catch up with them, documented so thoroughly that nobody can claim they didn't know what was happening. These days, when new people join my department, I tell them Patricia's rule. If it's not safe, it doesn't ship. Period. And I tell them Derek's story as a cautionary tale about what happens when you forget that rule. Because at the end of the day, our job isn't to ship products fast. Our job isn't to maximize profits or minimize costs or disrupt industries. Our job is to make sure that when a surgeon picks up one of our instruments or when a patient is connected to one of our monitors, that equipment works exactly as it's supposed to, every time, without fail. That's not being old-fashioned. That's not being resistant to change. That's being a professional. And no boss, no matter how many buzzwords they know, is ever going to make me compromise on that. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story of malicious revenge through compliance, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the workplace trenches. Drop a comment if you've ever had a boss who learned the hard way that some rules exist for good reasons. See you in the next one.